Shalom Aleichem, everybody. It has been quite a while since we got together. We are still continuing our learning with Mishle, not on a regular basis Sunday evenings while I'm taking this course, but I did want to take the opportunity here and there to try to record classes so we don't fall behind. We are in Mishle. We're in Perek Dalid, and I'm going to put on the screen, as soon as I get to share, the text where we're up to right now. There we go. Um, and we're going to continue from this thread that we've been dealing with about internalizing chokhmah, the Torah becoming part of life, the light, which was a very common theme before. And now we're also going to talk about more of the internalization and reinterpretation within our lives of what Torah is and how we're supposed to guard. Most importantly, this last few psukim have to do with guarding ourselves from outside influences, protecting ourselves. Let's start just reading the first couple of psukim right over here, and then we'll get into some of the details. B'ni l'dvarai hakshiva, and notice I highlighted a few words here, verbs in some purpose, and we'll see why shortly. B'ni l'dvarai hakshiva. Listen to my speech, my son. Again, addressing each individual as a father to a child. La'amarai hat oznecha. Incline your ear towards my words. Ayalizu me'enecha. Don't lose sight of them. Shomreim betoch levavecha. Guard them, keep them, watch them in your heart. Ki chaim hein lemotzehem lecho besaro marpe. They are life to those who find them, healing for the whole body. So if you look at the words, you'll see that, or this what I highlighted, you'll notice that there's repetition, but repetition in a general sense, meaning it's not the same word, the same idea. That we're talking about hakshiva, pay attention, hat oznecha, incline your ear, ali alizu, resist being distracted, and shomrem levavecha, you are like guarding them in your heart. So these are all different expressions. Like, why not just say one expression? This is very common in Tanakh, especially in Navi, when multiple verbs are used for what could have been said in one or two words. Why is that done? The same reason we do when we're talking to somebody we wanted to emphasize something. There's no concept in Tanakh of bolding something or highlighting something. Once in a while, you'll have dots on words in the Torah that's supposed to, in a sense, not just highlight, but to give us additional meaning. But when the Torah or the Navi wants to emphasize something, it uses multiple verbs with different meanings, but the general idea being the same, that they're trying to have us wake up and pay attention to something. Just like we do, like I say, when we're trying to talk to somebody, I want to get someone's attention to make sure they do something properly. So I want you to read the instructions. I want you to really think about them. I want you to pay attention. I want you to think about before you start. Again, just say read the instructions or do the job. But instead, we emphasize by repetition. The Malbim says that these verbs are also various stages of internalizing ideas. Hakshiva, we want to focus our attention. Hat oznecha, we're receptive. We're receptive, being open. We don't close ourselves off to something. Ayalizu is to resist the distraction for something that now we're starting to pay attention. All of us, when we're talking to somebody, on occasion they're middle talking, we're paying attention, but something happens and it distracts us. He says, don't be distracted. And shomrem l'vavecha, you're anchoring your identity. You're putting it into becoming a part of you. You cannot live only in the mind, he said, but we have to also store it in our hearts. And the promise that Shlomo gives us is l'chol b'saro marpeh. That's a striking promise that it's going to be a healing for the whole body. I mean, we're talking about wisdom. We're talking about Torah. Why is that necessarily healing for the whole body? And we've sort of answered that question before in the earlier part of this parak, but the Radak tells us that Torah heals not just the soul, but the person. We've already spoken about this, but he's reframing it slightly, because when we have our values are messed up, when they're out of order, they're out of whack, eventually they manifest themselves into something physical: anxiety, restlessness, fragmenting our attention. What happens when we protect our wisdom, when we use our wisdom, when we make it a part of us, then that itself restores the sense of wholeness. Midrash Mishle also adds that the Torah heals because it restores measure. What does that mean, measure? It means balance. Excess, distortion, imbalance, those are spiritual illnesses in a sense that lead us to do the wrong thing or bring us down the wrong path. Torah reintroduces proportion. The Rambam makes that very clear in many cases, and he talks about what we've referred to in the Rambam, the Shvil HaZahav, or the golden path. You don't want to be too extreme one way or the other way. You don't want to be a glutton. You also don't want to be someone who doesn't want to put food in their mouths. You have to have something in the middle. We're allowed, if we want to, as Rambam points out, to be in meduval b'rshut Torah. A person can be a glutton. Is there an isur to eating too much? No, there's not an isur unless it's physically harming you, because then you're damaging yourself, and that's prohibited. But the idea is that we have to try to find a balance in life with everything. That's the Rambam's approach, and he didn't just pull that out of thin air. He's also basing some of that, I would assume, on the approach of Shlomo HaMelech here in Mishle. The next pasuk, Kol mishmar netzor libecha, ki mimenu totzaot chayim. Look at I bolded this one. More than all that you guard your mind, for it is the source of life. Now, he says mind in this translation, but if you look at the word, it's libecha, your heart. Because the whole mind, heart, what does the mind control the heart? Does the heart control the mind? That's dealt with actually at length in Tanya, if you remember, if you learn Tanya. But in any case, I don't particularly care for the translation. I'm sure others will say your heart, because that's actually it says libecha. But what is he saying here? What's his point? When he says that everything you guard your mind, your heart, more than anything, because it's the source of life. What does that mean? Because this is really, there's a good word if you learn physics even one time, the word fulcrum. Right? If I take something, I have a mouse and I put it on a pen. Okay, so this is the fulcrum is the where it balances and moves from one side to the other of that mouse. So this is really the fulcrum and the axis of this entire parak. The Malbi tells us that with every kind of guarding, every kind of protective measure you could think of, you need to make sure what's best for you, how you protect yourself in a personal level. The heart itself requires extra layer of protection, intellectual, emotional, moral, because everything else flows from it. In other words, I might protect myself. Let's say, for example, I'll go for a walk. Not me, I don't want to say it like this. Someone who has trouble walking. So they may use kabayim, they use crutches, they may use a walker, they may use a cane. Why? Because they're protecting themselves from falling, maybe a balance problem, whatever it might be. So they know that. And that's one type of protection. Another is you get in a car, not just by law, but halachically, you got to buckle up because, God forbid, there's an accident. You don't want to go flying. So that's another form of protection. But the ultimate form of protection is our mind and our heart and how we view the world and how we view Torah and how we view life and how we relate to Hashem. All those require, says Shlomo HaMelech, an extra level of protection, the highest level of protection, because it leads to Totzaot Chaim. It means that direction, if you look, Kimimenu Totzaot Chaim, it says this for the source of life, but it's even deeper than that. It's even a deeper lesson. That these things that we do to protect ourselves are not isolated actions. They really lead to a trajectory. Where are we going in life? In other words, if I go back to the example of someone walking with a cane, when they get from point A to point B successfully without falling, the cane helped them. That's great. It doesn't necessarily change the direction of their life. God forbid they don't have that cane and they fall and break a hip. That does change the trajectory, at least in the short term, and potentially more than just the short term. So therefore, a person who guards their heart / mind produces a consistency in their life, because an unguarded heart leads to chaos. Even if your intentions are good, it doesn't make a difference. But if you don't protect yourself, and we're going to see what that means, to protect yourself, we've already talked about earlier in this chapter, which had to do with making sure you're in the right company, making sure you're making the right decisions, making sure you have the right teachers, making sure all these things that you surround yourself with in society, and knowing what your triggers are, things that distract you, things that take away from the protective layer of Torah, to distance yourself from them. It could be a person who you may be friends with, who every time you talk, it goes to Lashon Hara, and you just can't seem to stop it. And that friendship has to cease and desist, and that will be a protective measure for yourself. There's a statement that Chazal make, Chachamenu Zichronim Libracha, rabbis of blessed memory, make a very famous statement. It's mentioned many, many times. We've talked about it here. We've talked about it in Tefillah. We talked about it in Tanya, and that is Rachmana Liba Bai. Hashem wants our heart. It means that in a metaphorical sense. That God doesn't want to take our heart out of our body, but heart means that when we serve Hashem, or when we learn, or we do a mitzvah, going through it mechanically, we're still Yotze. If I sit down and learn Parshat Shavua, I'm not really thinking about it too much. I read the words, I say the words, but I'm not really thinking about much. I still did the mitzvah, Talmud Torah, but there's no feeling in it. Put on the tefillin, light candles, whatever the mitzvah might be. If my heart's not into it, it's a very big difference. And Hashem says, even in the beginning of Sefer Yeshayahu, so what do I need all your sacrifices for? It's meaningless. I need you. I need your neshama. Again, we go back to the relationship between husband and wife, parent, child, siblings, where you can give a birthday gift, you can give an anniversary gift, something, but here you go. But there's no feeling. It's lacking something because you want to give a part of yourself. That's what we do when we talk about serving Hashem, giving a part of ourself. And the part of ourself that we want to give, the heart, the mind, the chokhmah, the feeling, if we don't protect it, again, from all outside influences, then the heart that we're going to give is going to be going to need a little bit of heart work. Next pasuk, a couple psukim. Hasemi mecha ikshut pe lezut svatayim harchek mimeka. Put crooked speech away from you and keep devious talk far from you. By the way, just as an aside, you'll notice here, this last letter, let me make it highlighted. It's a chav sofit with a dot, dagesh, and an a, also kamatz. When you have a word that ends with a chav sofit, with a dot and an a sound, it's pronounced ka, not cha. So it's not mimecha, it's mimeka. It's as if there were a kaf and a hey at the end of the word. That's what that acts as. Anyways, so again, haser mimecha ikshut peh, put crooked speech away from you, ulezut svatayim harchek mimeka, and keep devious talk far away from you. Notice the difference in the verbs. To haser is to remove, and the harchek is to distance yourself. And einecha lenochach yabitu, let your eyes look forward, ve'afapecha yashiru negdecha, and keep your gaze straight ahead. So before I go into any detail, let's just talk about these two different verbs here. Haser mimeka and harchek. So lahasir mimeka, you have to take it away from you. You have to put it away. Means the assumption is that you are speaking in a crooked speech. What does crooked speech mean? It doesn't mean you talk sideways. It means that you're not talking appropriately. It could be you're not speaking nice to somebody. It could be that you're using your mouth for nivul peh. It could be you're not learning enough Torah because you're using your speech for. It means to remove that from you. That's step one, right? To get rid of that problem. And the next step is lezut svatayim harchek mimeka. Devious talk, keep far away from you. You don't want someone to then re-influence you to change who you are. Once you have overcome, they said the first step in any form of recovery is noticing that you have a problem. If I had high blood pressure and I don't know it, how am I supposed to treat it? How am I supposed to change my diet? How am I supposed to, if I need medication, if I am supposed to change my lifestyle? If I don't know, I don't know. So the first step is haser mimeka, get rid of it. Like in a sense means an awareness. The second step is that once you're doing something about it, you have to consistently protect yourself, continue doing it. And then in addition to the speech, you also have to be concerned about your surroundings. The surroundings says, keep your focus looking ahead and don't start straying. What does that mean? It's a metaphor that you keep your eyes on the prize. You want to make a change in your life, whether it's to stop smoking, to stop eating stuff you shouldn't eat, to learn more Torah, whatever it is, you have to stay focused. You have to make short-term goals. You have to make long-term goals. This is not stuff that's just being made up pie in the sky. This is exactly what Shlomo HaMelech is telling us directly and indirectly in these couple psukim. But speech comes first. The first thing it says is that crooked speech, Mitzudat David says, that crooked speech bends reality. It it also does something to a person. When a person talks in a way that they are hoping they'll be misunderstood, they're trying to uh, make you think something. What they're doing really is distorting normal life. They're distorting reality. And a person who speaks evasively eventually thinks evasively as well. There's a person who starts to inculcate it themselves how they speak to people in a certain way. That's who they become as well. The Malbim adds that ikshut peh is not just talking not nice words, but it's also a form of moral crookedness, justifying things, reframing things. I'm sure it's okay to do that. Everybody does that. Years and years ago, I wrote an article called The Hechsher of the EEI. What's the Hechsher of the EEI? Everyone eats it. In other words, you go to ask someone about a restaurant. Is it okay to eat there? I don't know, but everyone eats it. Or is that candy bar kosher? Everyone eats it. Okay, that's not an answer. I actually had that happen to me more than one time, but specifically, I remember being in Brooklyn one time. I was standing outside a restaurant, and I didn't know the state, the status of various kosher symbols or various kosher organizations. That was one of my first trips, and I was standing outside a restaurant. I asked somebody who was passing by, do you know if this is acceptable hechsher, if I can eat there? He said, some people eat there. Okay, whatever that answer means. But again, what happens once a person's language becomes dishonest, the heart follows very quickly. And when it says that a nechal enochach yabitu, it doesn't mean have tunnel vision. That's not what it means at all, because you have to be aware of your surroundings. You have to know what's going on around you. But again, it means a form of moral alignment. The tzaddik doesn't chase every stimulus that's out there. He has to focus on spiritual discipline. The Midrash tells us more than one place, based on psukim such as don't get turned astray by your heart and your eyes, that the eyes act as a heart's scouts. They look ahead. They look at what is that out there. And I'll give you a good example. A person, and this is brought in Silat Yesharim. A person can be walking at night and see a figure, and that figure could look like it's a bear, and be scared of it and be afraid and have to run or pull out a gun in case they're in danger. When in fact it's a tree, or they may see something that looks like a person when in fact it's somebody who's waiting to pounce on you, and you don't know what it is. So what happens? Our eyes are constantly looking at our. That's how Hashem created us. We have to be aware of our surroundings. That we have to see what's available. And God forbid a person has a problem with their vision or they're blind, it changes their ability to be able to go forward and to see their surroundings, to see what the dangers might be. This is exactly the beginning of Silat Yesharim talks about as well. It also talks about the idea of a person who's put into a maze, like in a garden maze. We have hedges. You have to walk through the maze. The best thing you could have is someone standing out, because you can't see anywhere, right? You can't see only but the hedges that are in front of you. So he says the best thing you could have is someone standing on top and telling you which way to go. So he said that's kind of the basis of his book. He's trying to help us through making through the maze. But that's what Shlomo HaMelech is telling us here as well. Keep your eyes focused. Be aware of your surroundings. Don't be dragged in by your surroundings, but you have to know about them. Next pasuk. Hales ma'agal raglecha. Survey the course you take. And then all your ways will prosper. Al tat yamin usmol, haser raglecha mera. Do not swerve to the right or to the left. Keep your feet from evil. So first, let's talk about a word. And that word here is pales. That's the verb. That's the imperative, the do, the pales. What is a peles? A peles is a level. So if you want to make sure that you draw a line on a wall that you're going to paint, or you're going to hang a picture and you want to make sure it's levels, you buy a level, or if you already have it, which has that little air bubble, and make sure that it's straight. That's called a peles. It also has to do with, like you talked, the miflas hakineret, the level of the kineret, and how high it is after the rains. So it's all the same word. So word pales, ma'agal raglecha, where it says survey the course you take, is not just that it's okay translation, because to survey means to kind of look around you, but it's even deeper than that. It's making sure that you are on the straight and narrow in the literal and figurative sense. What else is he telling us here, though? It means to weigh and to calibrate. Maybe calibrate's a better word. So before he said, keep your eyes straight. He said, be aware. Now he's saying, now you've taken that information in. Now what you need to do with that information is you need to calibrate it, to calculate. What do I do? Do I walk forward? Do I not? Again, in the metaphorical sense. Radak explains that even a good path, you need to constantly be calibrating and make sure you're going the right path, because drift is very subtle and causes big change. My mashal I've given many times over the years for what this means is the arch in St. Louis, Missouri. So if you're familiar, there's an arch. It's called the Gateway to the Midwest. I believe it's 638 feet. Now, I'm doing that from memory. I have to double check, but 638 feet high, an arch, and you go up. I've been up in it. You go up in a little car that goes as it goes up inside of the arch itself, and from the on top, you can look out and see a beautiful view. And there's a little sway and it's built in to the construction, into the design, to go with the wind. They said that the way they built the arch was they started on the right side and the left side, then met up in the top. They said if they were off in their measurements by 1/16 of an inch on the bottom, but by the time they came to the top, there would be a tremendous difference or differential between where the two pieces met, and it wouldn't have come together. So in other words, the engineering and the mathematical calculations had to be extremely precise, and when they built it as well. Same thing is here. Well, it looks like a 16th, which if you trade futures, you know that there's a word called a teeny. A teeny is a 16th. So if you have a 16th of a movement in your path, sometimes it makes absolutely no difference. If I'm walking from my living room to my dining room and I deviate by 1/16 of a millimeter, it makes no difference. It's zero difference. But if we're driving on a road and it's a two-lane road, one lane in each direction, let's say, and you drift just a little bit, there could be, God forbid, some horrific consequences to something like that. So again, you have to be aware of your situation. And that's why he uses this terminology as well. He says, Altat yaminu smol. It's not extremism, avoidance. It doesn't mean to avoid everything. It doesn't mean to avoid everything, but it means to be resistant to rationalization. Sometimes people try to convince us of things that may be for our good, and sometimes they're not necessarily for our good. But when somebody tries to convince us of something that isn't for our good, and deep down, when somebody, we should maybe try it, then all of a sudden we start making these, we like lahatzdik, we justify these ideas. Yeah, it makes sense. If it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. But the final statement he makes here in the parak is haser chamera. It's just a general statement of, you got to keep yourself away from all evil. Walk away from it. Why raglecha, your feet? Because your feet can move you. I can be sitting at somewhere and I shouldn't be there for whatever reason. I can think to myself, I shouldn't be here. Great. Good job, Zed. I can close my eyes. Great job. But what I really need to do is get up and move and get out of the situation. And in that case, it says that after all the warnings and all the protective measures he's telling us about, and to make sure we don't drift, and make sure we don't get influenced, the bottom line is you cannot really move forward without actually literally moving forward, taking that step. There is a story I heard a long time ago. It's a mashal, a parable. Hopefully I remember the whole thing. That someone was walking by a busy intersection, and he saw somebody standing, a friend of his standing at the intersection. He says, where are you going? He says, I'm going to Yerushalayim. Okay, very nice. A couple of days later, he sees the guy, passes again. He's still standing in the same spot. Where are you going? I'm going to Yerushalayim. Says, okay, I thought you were going there a couple of days ago. Comes back a week later. Where are you going? Staying in the intersection. I'm going to Yerushalayim. He says, you do realize that to go to Yerushalayim, you actually have to start walking. So the same thing is true with us. That we have goals. You say, I'm going to stop this. I'm going to do this. I'm going to get to shul more often. I'm going to daven with the minyan. I'm going to remember to do this mitzvah. I'm going to say Kriyat Shema. Whatever it might be, it's good. It's good. That's what this parak is about, setting these goals and not being distracted. But the bottom line is, as he says here in the very last three words, keep away from evil, not just evil, but temptations and things that keep us off our course. So this parak ends not with inspiration. It's not an inspiring necessarily type of line, but it's a guardianship. It's telling us that wisdom, this chapter, which is really about wisdom, is wisdom has to be loved. It has to be chosen. We have to proactively work on wisdom, and it has to be guarded because that leads to a life that gets better and better. The Parak's general idea is demanding, but it's also very humane, if I can use that word. You're not asked to be perfect. There's no such thing. We talked about Sheva Yipol come that Sheva Yipol Tzaddik v'kam that Tzaddik will fall 6, 7 times, but he'll get up, and that's what makes him the Tzaddik. That even after the 7th time, he continues falling, he still gets up. And I know you're thinking I've fallen, I can't, but I can't get up. You're asked to protect what shapes you, right? We do that on a natural basis, anyways. You have personal property. You don't just leave it. You have a nice phone or even not a nice phone. You don't just leave it somewhere on a shelf in a store. You protect it. Your physical body, you protect. Again, you put on the seatbelt and you make sure you don't walk in the middle of the street, in the middle of traffic. You're not promised, Hashem doesn't promise, as they say, a rose garden. You're not promised a life of ease. What you are promised, in a sense, is light. You keep walking and doing the right thing, you're presented with light. So Mishle, Perek Daled, 4th chapter, insists that spiritual light isn't built by intensity, and as the beginning of Mesilat Yesharim says, it's not with going into freezing cold mikveh and fasting all the time, but by attention, paying attention, being aware of your surroundings, being aware. It's this idea we talked about before of mindfulness, being aware. That's super important as well. So that brings us to the end of Perek Daled, chapter 4. I'm going to stop here. We'll pick up with chapter 5, Perek Hey, next time. As we said in the very beginning of Mishle, there are multiple themes that run throughout the Sefer. The first general theme is the first 10 chapters. We just finished the number 4. And we'll continue Bezrat Hashem at some point next week. I'll make another video and send it out. Meantime, have a wonderful week, everybody.